Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know that I feel good. Doing things I never thought I could. Smiling in the mirror.
Woohoo! We've got so many people joining us. I am so excited to have this incredible conversation for sure today. I've got a very special guest sitting over in my waiting room that will be joining me in just a minute. Thank you all for joining us. Real Talk is a wonderful webinar series that we're hosting on a nationwide basis to really talk about and address the challenges that are presenting themselves, the obstacles that we're seeing happen in the industry. Everybody's talking about the NAR proposed settlement as well. So we're going to do the very same, but to get those out there in the open and to tackle them, right? And talk to top producing real estate agents and mortgage professionals all over the country, what they're hearing, what they're seeing, and what they're doing about it to help set you all up for success. To put some great success strategies in play and overcome these challenges, and not just, I can't stand keeping hearing this, survive through 2024 and 2025, but to actually thrive through it and really see the opportunity at the end of the road as we all get through this in our industry. I'm Abby Waltz. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the National Director here at Homes for Heroes. Couple of quick housekeeping things. We will be monitoring chat. Feel free to pop in questions. We'll pull those into the conversation that we're going to have with our amazing guest here. Another thing I want to encourage you, I've got two screens up on my right. I've got my phone right in front of me. Every screen probably has about 12 or something tabs. If you're going to be here, please be here and be present, and to be able to receive what you hear and to apply it to your business. At the end of the day, the goal of this webinar series is to help us all as individual professionals elevate ourselves, but also collectively as a whole elevate the industries that we're in too. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on the one and only, the amazing, probably one of the most incredible human beings I know, Jim McKinnies from McKinnies Realty out of South Bend, Indiana. Jim, thanks so much for joining me.
Absolutely. I am so honored to be here. You always talk up. Yes, I'm like, man, like you're not really that great. We're just Jim. We're just here to help.
You are too humble. Jim is not only an amazing broker owner, also practicing real estate as well. He's an incredible father, a true friend, and an amazing leader within our Homes for Heroes community as well. There's so many that look to you for inspiration and help and guidance as well. So much so that I saw your stats from last year. You helped, what, 740-ish clients and sold over 170 million in real estate last year alone.
Our company did, yeah, our offices and that's our team. We have amazing people and just really blessed to be able to serve so many families, and we're just really blessed.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. Well, I've had the pleasure of knowing you for over a decade now, but many of our listeners and viewers have not. So if you wouldn't mind just doing a quick intro, giving a little bit of history and background, that'd be great.
Absolutely. My name's Jim McKinnies, and like Abby said, I am first and foremost, I am a husband to Kim, and I am a proud father of four beautiful children, Andrew, Emma, Anna, and we have a little one. Number four was a surprise, Eloise. We call her Ella. So we're very active there, and I love real estate. I love serving, and I love helping people grow. And that's that's my passion. And so I'm just really blessed to be here today to chat a little bit, and hopefully we all can learn from each other. Really, I'm learning. So as what I share today are going to be things that I'm learning, and I'm continuing try to improve. So that's I think that's the goal in our industry. And this is a great time for us to really lean on one another and grow.
Yeah, absolutely. Cooperation over competition for sure. It's how we all rise the tide in our industry. Are you ready? You want to just like jump into it?
Let's do it.
Awesome. All right, let's talk about the thing that's probably at the forefront of all of our minds right now in our industry, the proposed NAR settlement and the impacts that at least you're seeing from your view in the present moment where we're at. From a high level, big picture perspective, just to start out off the gate, what's your take on the impact of the NAR settlement? Is it an obstacle or an opportunity?
Well, I look at things as opportunities. So I look at this as a great way for you to really be able to articulate your value that you already have shown. So to me, it's a great opportunity. I think that there's a lot of negativity kind of surrounding it. Like you can kind of feel the pulse of, I think there's a little bit of fear, a little bit of unknown. I think there's a lot of that. But in the midst, if you can cut through all of the emotional side of what you may feel change is coming, I think there's great opportunity. And I think that it provides a lot of refining and clarity in what you do and why you do it. And I think that's really, I love it. So like, I really think it's a great opportunity, and it's definitely a good opportunity for coaching and training too. And I think that we all need each other a little bit more because we got to role play and coach and do some other stuff because of this.
Yeah. Yeah, growth doesn't present itself without some challenges and obstacles that you got to overcome to build that strength up and to continue to learn and to grow and to apply that to our businesses for sure. How, from your perspective, you're in Indiana, you're also in Michigan, right? Across the
Mhm.
border too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So two states. How are you seeing it impact you, your brokerage, your agents right now?
Well, we haven't really seen a negative impact at all. What we've seen is, again, focusing on the coaching, the dialogue, the conversations, compensation conversations, having that. So we're doing a lot of coaching, a lot of training, a lot of role playing, and just a lot of setting processes and forms and doing all of that just so um, we know how to present, and we know what are the tools available for us to actually use that. So on our side of it, we've been very heavy on training, very heavy on role playing, and very heavy on just equipping and building confidence in conversations that haven't. They're not normally made. In our company, we always had a path of buyer meetings and buyer. So this is something that is not completely foreign to us. This is something that we already did. But now we just have a forced compensation conversation that has to happen, which then that causes a little bit of anxiety and fear. So we're just trying to combat that with knowledge, with training, and with support. And I think that that's been our biggest thing, just trying to come around one another and help one another, and then gain some confidence before you have those conversations. And I think that's key, confidence in those conversations.
Mm. I love that. You say it's not different, but it's slightly different because you're plugging in some new tools and trainings and coaching opportunity for them for sure. Let's dive into that just a little bit, because not everybody has practice doing like buyer consults or whatever you'd like to call them for yourself and then your brokerage. What did that process look like before that you had your agents and yourself following? And what are some of the tweaks that you've been making to it now to be more proactive before August?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that the landscape has changed. So what we would consider best practices wasn't something that was always practiced. So it was best practices in the past, which we see a higher success rate when you are actually sitting down and you're connecting. We're in a people business. And we have to connect with people. You have to have a connection with people. So sitting down and meeting that person, connecting with them in a face-to-face meeting is always, there's a higher level of success for both staying in relationship with that person through let's say a transaction, but even more, we always look beyond. We look at what is the best practice for you to gain referrals, to gain repeat business, to gain that trust with that client. And we see that it was always a higher success rate when you meet, you connect, and then you're the guide to those homes versus you meet them at the home and then you actually try to start that relationship from a transactional standpoint and backing into a relationship versus having a relationship and leading into the transaction. It just seems it was a little bit more success leading into the transaction from relationship versus the transaction hopefully gaining the relationship because of the transaction. So that was our past. That was the way we always did it. Now, because of the conversations, we're navigating not just meetings, but conversations on the phone, conversations when we're, if you have a buyer that wants to go look at a home, what do the conversations sound like now when it's going to be mandatory for you to actually have a commitment, some level of commitment from that particular buyer that you're representing them or some form of representation for you to actually go. So those conversations leading into what best practices are, because before we could there were some agents that they didn't do the best practices. They knew that was the best way to do it, but sometimes there was exceptions. Well, if there's no exceptions now, how do you go ahead and do that? What's the pathway? And that's been what we've been doing, navigating what best practices used to be and now what are mandatory practices now. And the mandatory practices are more aligned to our best practices, but we know that generally speaking, maybe 35 to 40% didn't go with best practices. They went, just the normal market, and it still produced transactions, but it wasn't. It's not. You can't do that in our current climate. So you're going to have to evolve a little bit. So that's what we're changing and kind of modifying and doing a lot of training on those things, on how to lead into those meetings, how to lead into those conversations with confidence, because a lot of those, some agents have never had the conversation. And some that have had the conversations, you may have a different way and process of doing it now because of some of the mandatory things that have to be in place for you to actually show a property.
Mm. I love that it's forcing us to get back to basics and the fundamentals and what we probably knew was right all along. Maybe just didn't practice it because it was a little bit easy during some of those marketing times. And yeah, I love it. Let's break it down a little bit further, because I'd like to help people understand how you're coaching your agents to actually have the conversation. So let's break it down and separate it out between buyers and sellers, because this conversation is happening on both sides of those deals. It just looks a little bit different, right? We as agents ourselves have grown really accustomed to talking compensation with sellers, right? It's a part of the listing agreement. We've had those all along. I'm sure the conversations are changing right now with their questions that they may have around what they're hearing and all that kind of stuff. But let's take it to the buy side first, because I find that that's what people are really focused on right now. How are you, like, literally, what do those conversations look like that you're helping your agents have with buyers?
Yeah, and that's huge, because a seller, we all go into a listing presentation and you're meeting a seller. Compensation is part of that conversation always. You're always talking about that compensation. Buyers, now what we're seeing on the ground is there's not a lot of buyers that are necessarily initiating the conversation as much. But what we're seeing is agents, we have to now initiate the compensation conversation. So what we used to have to do it's not so much that the buyer's coming and saying, hey, I have to pay you now. I mean, that may happen here and there, but we have to initiate it through. So if someone's calling and saying, I want to go look at, 123 River Street at 4:00, you have to initiate a conversation with them. And in the past, that conversation would never be initiated. So what we're focusing on is the training of that conversation, So you're navigating that conversation on, I would love to show you 123 River Street. And then you're guiding them through a conversation on learning more about them and leading into the compensation, because you got to talk about compensation or some sort of representation, level of representation, before you can actually show that property, because you're going to have some sort of written agreement, something written by them, that's saying that you're representing them, or in some capacity you're you could be doing different levels of representation, because there's lots of different models out there and options. But that conversation now is being initiated primarily by the agent, and that's where the competence is at. Like, how are you initiating the conversations about compensation? It's easy because everyone trains about the seller, and the seller's expecting that conversation. But a buyer that doesn't know anything about the lawsuit, that doesn't know anything about the settlement, that doesn't know anything, and there's tons of buyers that don't really know. I mean, they're not asking any those questions. They just want to go look at the house. And they haven't been watching the news. They haven't been doing, and like, they get it, and and they don't know. So what you have to do is you have to then educate them or initiate a compensation conversation with them from a sign call or a Zillow lead or whatever that lead source may be. And now that's different than them just bringing a question to you. And I would prefer it to be like that we initiate it, because then we can kind of set up the pillars that I believe are best practices on navigating through a conversation. And we kind of hit on those, Abby. I know that we talked a little bit about those kind of 3 areas that we focus on when we're talking about conversations, about the care, competence, and communication. Those 3 points. And we try to implement this in our conversations. We try to implement this in our buyer meetings. We try to implement this in everything, because we believe that it builds confidence for the agent communicating. And I also think it builds that trust with that lead or that person you're communicating with. And then you can have those compensation conversations in a different setting emotionally. Your connection's different, your confidence is different, your energy is different. And I see that the success is much more likely if you have that.
I love that. Yeah. So a couple of things with that. I know you're in a state that never had like the buyer agency requirement. Some on this call may have already had that in place, and it's not that big of a change, right? I've had a license in 3 different states, one of which did require agency agreements, and to have that conversation. So I know a lot of people are out there trying to navigate what this looks like. I love that you guys are being proactive about this. And if you're up for it, do you mind just role playing in a couple different scenarios for me?
Let's do it.
With me? All right.
Yeah.
So you just brought up like the new leads, right? Because there's a couple of different types of clients that we've had. We have the new leads, and then we have those that we've been working with and representing all along. Maybe you're 3, 4, 5 months in, and you've been showing properties, and you haven't approached this conversation that you're going to need to have pretty soon if you haven't already. So let's take it the first one. Brand new, lead off the internet. You get my contact information. What are you doing? Like, are you picking up the phone and calling me? What's that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're initiating the conversation. If we have their information, I'm calling at a place. I mean, if I can control the call, like I'm calling from a place where I can control my access to information. Like, I love to be able to pull up information when I'm on a call. So if I am proactively calling somebody back, I first want to set up my success. So I want to set up that I have access to information. I want to set up that I have all their information as much as I possibly have, and it's complete. I kind of know that. And then I want to have questions. So if they want to look at a property, let's say they want to go look at 123 River Street.
Mm-hmm.
The way that goes is I'll call back, and I always, because the motivation for their initiation in whatever way to call us is, I want to go look at this property. So I am not a block to that. I am a guide to that. I am guiding them to what they want. I am not blocking them from what they want. So my conversations isn't about, and I think that a lot of times like agents like can look at this and say, if I don't just run out there and do it, I am somehow a block to that. That's not true. It's all your mentality on like, I want to guide them to get there, but now there's some things that I have to guide them through in order to get there. So I will usually call, I'm like, hey, this is Jim. I try to make sure that they know that I'm smiling. That sounds small, but that I want to talk to them, that I'm excited about talking to them, that I'm grateful that they called, and I don't know how they got me, but they got me, and I am so grateful for that. So I want them to know that. I want that to resonate with them, that I want to help them. That, man, I seen that you looked at 123 Main Street. I would have already printed out everything about the house. I would know everything about the house. I would do that. I'm like, that is an amazing house. Then immediately I'm going to go into not the house, but I'm going to go into what attracted you about to that house. Like why do you want, I'm not going to say, what time do you want to go look at the house? I'm going to ask them, so why do you want to go look at the house? Like I mean, why, like, what is the reason why you want to go look at the house? What motivated? And like, oh, it's right by where my mom lives, or it's right by a school, or I just drove by. So like if they just drove by, you're like, awesome, you just drove by. So do you like that area? Is that the area you like? Is that so what you're doing is you're gathering information. And I have a form, I call it a potential buyer form. Everybody in our office, we have it. It has a list of all of the information, the questions that we consider a complete buyer profile. And so what I'm doing is I'm intertwining that form, the questions on that form, in my conversation. So I'm not even getting into, I'm not talking about compensation or anything right now. I'm guiding them. Like, I'm not saying, hey, you want to go look at the house. That's great. But do you know what my fee is? Like that is not going to be best practice. You want to first show that you care about them and asking the right questions, because then what happens is, why are you looking at the house? Why do you want to go? Why do you like the area? And then you start talking to them, and in the midst of that conversation, that will go into different areas. So typically what we'll do is that question about the house will navigate into how they found the house, why they are looking there, what are the motivations behind them wanting to go look at the house. Have they looked at other homes? Have they already looked at other houses? Have they already spoke to a lender? Have you ever already spoke to a lender? I mean, so we're getting information, and those are all it sounds like from an agent side, man, you're just drilling them with questions. No, what we're really doing is just having a conversation with them, and we are caring about them because we're asking them why. And if there's anything in that why that you could go deeper. So like, let's say, well, why? Because I want to be closer to where my kids go to school. Awesome. You have kids. How many kids do you have? I have 4 kids of my own. Like, how many kids do you have? And like, I'm immediately connecting to them on why they are doing not what they're doing. What they're doing is, that's not. And then like, well, have you bought a house before? Like, so you're talking like, well, have you went through the process before? Have you bought a house? No, I haven't bought a house before. Really? I'm like, man, it is an exciting time to buy. And then I immediately go in. If they haven't bought a house before, they need to know about the process. They need to know about how everything works. And so I will immediately pivot from the house to a meeting. Like, I'll immediately pivot from that to a meeting and say, what we normally do, I can set up 123 River Street, and that's awesome. We can set that up. But what I normally do is meet first in the office. You haven't bought a house before. I would be honored to be able to just kind of explain the process to you, let you know what to expect. I can connect you with the lender and just kind of go through that process. Now, if I can do that and not have that house, I won't talk about compensation until I get there until they're in front of me. Like, I won't even, because I don't need to, because I'm actually like, I'm not going to do it. I want to be as close as possible to them when I talk about compensation. I want to be as close as possible to them when I'm talking about how agents work. All of those things, like, I want to do that. Now, if this is like, let's say it's a cold, like They don't want to do anything. They just want to go look at the house. They want to do that. I will say, like, if they haven't bought, I'm like, hey, do you know how agents work? Do you know how agents work? And like they're usually no, like they don't really understand how agents work. And I usually do this in our meetings, but normally what I'll do is I'll walk through. I'm like, well, you called me about 123 River Street. How'd you find that? They're like, well, I drove by. You seen a sign in the yard? They're like, yeah, I seen a sign in the yard. Well, do you know how they got the sign in the yard? They're like, well, no, I don't know how, like, well, they entered into a contract with the seller to sell that property. And then they put a sign in the yard. And that seller is represented by that agent. And so that agent is doing their best to represent their client. And then you come along and you want to see that property. Well, you need somebody representing you, not somebody that's representing the seller. Because to the seller, you are not a client, you're a customer. And that there's a difference between that. So you need somebody that's representing you as a client, that you have an agent, just like they have an agent, you need an agent, because you need somebody that's showing you the process, that's negotiating in your best interest, that's doing all. So all of this isn't just from a phone call. This is kind of like from our meeting, but I've had phone calls that have went this way. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to exhibit that, look, I'm more than just opening that door. I'm more than that. And there's more to that. I'm more than that. And there's more to that. There's more to this than that. And for them to kind of get that picture, then that can lead in, because then they see, look, I care. I'm willing to spend time, not just going after a deal, but I'm willing to spend time with them to educate them, to help them. And then it shows a confidence level that, like, look, I know what's happening, and I'm giving you some information that is going to help you because you need representation. And if you like, I don't think it's fair. I don't think that it's fair if for you not to have representation. Like, you should have representation. The seller has representation. So why don't you have representation? So like, when I get into it, like, I think that, like, the competence of knowing the framework of how everything works and how everything is pieced together. And then there's other components to that could be the market, the process, and all of those things. But in that conversation, you want to try to sprinkle in the care component, that you're actually caring more than just showing the house, and you're showing more than just that, the competence. And then you want to communicate. And I think this is very big. Like, in your communication, you have to be you. When you're talking to them, you have to be yourself. You can't try to be somebody else. And we can get more into this, because I think this is something that's really, I feel like there's a little trap that's being set like, for everybody, because of this lawsuit and because of, like, everything that's out there about this value prop. There's this trap that's being set that you resist trying to be like somebody else. The content, you can take the content away, but be you. Like, don't try to be somebody other than you. Like, I can't go out there and try to be somebody other than Jim. And there's other people out there that can't be, I can't be you. So don't watch all these coaching and all this stuff about, well, this is how you do the buyer broker. Take the content, but be you in the conversation, because you want to have the relationship, because they're going to go back to you for their family, their friends. They're not going to go back to this version of you that you're acting like, because you're trying to present this value prop in a way that I got to have this. I was like, the value is you. I'm the value. I'm bringing the value to the table. And when you start thinking about that, it's not that you have something unique that someone else has. We all may be in real estate, but you have something that I cannot offer to somebody, and I have something that you can't offer, and that's me. I can offer me, and you can offer you, and that's been discounted in this whole conversation. Is the individual value you have on who you are, not just what we do. And I think that's very, very key.
Yeah, I think that's a huge takeaway from this particular webinar, for sure, is that you've got to double down on who you are and what makes you unique. I love that you said I'm more than that, right? Your value goes to your worth, right? And what you do that's going to be valuable to help your clients. I love the care, competence, and communication. The care is really asking the questions, the curiosity component of it, so that you can be that true guide for them through this process because of what you do as a professional, right? And then that competence component of it is the value, actually knowing what your value is, what makes you unique, doubling down and leaning in to that, as uncomfortable as it may be if it's foreign and new, um, and really showcasing what you offer as an agent, because I think we're all more than door openers, right? Or you call me, you get me, right? Yes, I want you to pick up your phone, but it doesn't mean that you show up at that door 30 seconds later because you had nothing better to do in your life
Yeah.
with your time, you know? Be a true professional about it. Have them make appointment. Encourage them to come have a meeting. I love that you are also adaptable to shift what that conversation looks like. Maybe they are just wanting to see that house and they're not wanting to come into the office first and have a formal buyer consult or understand the process a little bit more. And you, like you said, you're not a barrier to them getting into the house. You pivot your messaging and adapt with it to better educate them and guide them on the phone right then and there to help them get to the next step of what that looks like for them. So,
And I think a lot of it is, from what I've gotten feedback from agents on maybe some of the reservations that they have on not just immediately going out and like wanting to show a house, or they feel like, so like what I consider care, others can consider that as I'm caring by asking the questions. But sometimes people can think that like that may be adding barriers to what they want, right? So like I'm asking questions, so it's making it more complicated for them to get. They just give them what they want, but it's not that, because I care. Like, because I care, I know that there's more than just what they want. There's more there. So I'm asking those questions. So it's from an agent standpoint, it's you're getting out of the mindset that I am being an obstacle. I am actually guiding them and I'm helping them. And that is a shift, because if my value proposition is my speed to the door, and their speed to the door. And that is what my exclusive value proposition is, speed to the door. Then this is going to disrupt that. So you have to be able to say, look, by me having these conversations, it's not that I don't want them to get to the door. It's not that I'm trying to block them to the door. I'm trying to get them to the door. I am trying to do that. And you have to keep that foremost, because there is going to be times when there's going to be clients that will not want any of the talk. They want that carrot. At that point, you have to be very direct on, okay, absolutely, we'll do that, but this is what we will go ahead with. In order for us to do that, this is what we need to do. And then it could be you go right down, and then you have to make that consideration if they're a good fit for you, if you're going to work with them, and all of those things. So I'm not unrealistic, because we're in the market. So I understand that not everybody is like, hey, I want to go meet. I know that you're going to have challenges to that. Well, our coaching is we do a lot of overcoming objections. Like what are objections to that? And then we have to then overcome those objections by pivoting into, well, this is what, this is best for us to do. So we're basically pivoting conversations and objections. So like, to me, it's one of those things that you have to start doing it, and you got to change the mindset as from an agent standpoint, because I think that a lot of people, a lot of agents, and we have agents even in our company that they're shifting their mindset because they were speed to the door. So speed to the door is no longer going to be, it is still speed to the door, but we have to do this first. And I think that is going to be a very big component. So care is not an obstacle. Care is actually a benefit.
yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, you're never going to go to your doctor, right? And right, your goal is to feel better, right? The goal in what we do is to have the not just a home, but the right home that fits their needs and all that kind of stuff. You're never going to do that with just, here's what I think it is, right? Because you don't understand what's going on with the patient, what's going on with the buyer. You've got to ask more questions to get to the bottom of it. And from a professional perspective too, I mean, we, as real estate professionals and even as lenders, if they're listening into this too, we do this constantly, multiple times a day for our clients. Our clients are doing this every 7 to 8 years or so. So there's a tremendous amount of value in your experience and your knowledge and all that kind of stuff, and asking and posing those right questions to get curious, to better understand what their needs are, and then to get them not just into that door, but ultimately through the door of the home that they really truly want and need at the end of the day, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's key. I mean, I think that I was reading a few of the comments, and I really think it's really I look at, so the buyer agent agreement, and there's different places will have different names for that may help them with their conversation. So one of the things with that, when we're actually talking about the compensation conversations, is the buyer agreement, the buyer representation agreement gives me the ability to negotiate for their fees to be paid. So that's a different narrative, right? So like, because we know that from in Indiana, we can negotiate at the point of sale. So at the point of sale, so we want to have representation. And instead of the narrative always being, this is what I charge, this is what my fee is, this is what my, like, the narrative is really like, they need representation that can negotiate for them and that can work for them for their best interest. So the buyer representation agreement gives me the permission to negotiate back to the seller and the listing agent for them to pay for them to be represented. And then if that doesn't happen, then there's terms in that. So that's where you have to change the narrative to gain confidence. And like, so we did that this last week. We did a whole coaching and we did a training with our team, and we changed a little bit of some things and the framework of where we're presenting from, the message of where we're presenting. I'm not presenting based on what you pay me. I'm presenting based on what you allow me to do for you. Like, so by you working with me, you're giving me the green light to negotiate for the seller or the listing agent to pay for you to have representation. And that's a different narrative. And I've noticed that agents are having more confidence in that conversation versus the conversation that this is what you have to pay me. And that's the core of the conversation. I believe the core of the conversation needs to be, but you need representation. And I believe in fair housing. And I believe fair housing, like I believe in all of that. And I think that I think it's fair for them to have representation. I think it's fair for me to fight for representation for you, because you deserve to be represented. You deserve somebody in your corner negotiating and being with you every step of the way. And I think that is a key component on changing the script, the narrative, the conversation, and you're leading in from an area of confidence from an agent. I'm confident that I'm okay sharing a little bit about, like, I'm just asking them to give me the green light to negotiate that they don't have to pay it. It's given me the ability to negotiate. And that's this change is, you have to be a good negotiator.
Yeah.
You're negotiating at every level, from the seller to the buyer. Now with the other, every contract you're negotiating, and you need to show your value and your competence in the negotiations. And they need to see that even at the buyer representation level, that look, I'm negotiating for you. I'm not asking you to pay me this fixed number. I'm asking you to allow me to negotiate this number. Like, and like that's where I'm really trying to focus on. And then if I'm unable to, then this is what that looks like, but give me the green light to go after it. And that's really how we kind of tried to flip that script a little bit, because we're like, man, this is a challenge to get someone that never has had those conversations to have those conversations. We're like, we got to change the messaging that would build confidence in those conversations.
Yeah, and it's not only the shift, right, in the narrative that you're having in these conversations with your client, which I absolutely love how you've just phrased that. I'm sure, yes, this is recorded, people. Yes, you can go back to about minute, I don't know, 36, 37 when he started saying that. But it's a mind shift for us as professionals too, because it's a different way of doing things than we've ever done them before. And the stories that we're telling ourselves or the things that we're clinging to needs to change in order for us to, again, shift the narrative, have these conversations professionally with our clients, make sure that they know that we care about them, but still approach a compensation conversation with a buyer up front. And I think too, you had shared with me earlier, you're being adaptable on your buyer broker agreements. One could be for 24 hours if it's that Zillow lead that you're just wanting to go meet at the house and whatnot and see if you're a fit, and then extend that a little bit more, right? You're adapting and kind of shifting with the client's needs too, but still having that conversation up front.
Yeah, what we're trying to do is we're trying to give confidence to the agents that in every scenario, they both have a conversation and a tool to be able to navigate them through that scenario. And there's going to be scenarios that you're not going to be able to push into the buyer meeting. You're not going to get the buyer meeting, but you want to have a chance for relationship to build into the meeting. So different tiers, and those can be similar. I know Zillow has a showing, a touring of homes, I think agreement is what they call it. So, we, have some different levels there that like it's not exclusive, it's non-exclusive, and it's on a shorter time, and there's no compensation tied to it. But if you think about it, is there compensation tied to somebody fast to the door? Like if for them to show the house, if they don't buy the house, most people aren't charging that person per showing. They may, but I'm just saying, you could do whatever you want with that. But what I'm saying is there's going to be some opportunity that you could go out. They still are going to have some sort of agreement that meets the guidelines of what that agreement would be, a start and end, all of those type of things, but it would be lesser than a full buyer representation agreement. And that gives that tool for you. That's not best practice, but that is giving something. So what we're trying to do is accommodate all of the agents and all of the experiences and that confidence to say, look, I don't want you to fear that you're going to lose all this business. There's opportunity for you to step into that, but you still need to be able to have these conversations. And these conversations are very key. I also think that like when you're talking about value, one of the big things, I'm not sure if anybody has read it, but NAR put out in 2023 a survey to all the real estate agents. And I think this is a very key piece, when you're trying to show competence, make sure you're listening to what the clients, what buyers really want to hear. So when they want to work with an agent, the reason why they said they are working with an agent or they feel there's value in an agent is that agent would help them find their house, right? So in your value proposition, you have to have something tied to your ability or something different about you, about finding some sort of your home hunting skill, right? Or it's that part of it. And then the second part of it is the process. It was like, okay, they're able to navigate the process. This is an unknown process. So this is why. So over 50% of them said, hey, this is why I see value in an agent. And then the third one was like the people other competent people and people that care. They're like you. So like when I meet people, they're like, Jim, I really like you. Do you have other people that I can work with that are like you? So you're like, yeah, absolutely. I have lenders, I have title companies, I have everybody. My team can then help you. So when you're starting to build competence, if you feel like, man, I haven't been in the business that long, or I don't have that many, like that value proposition again is you. And then you then need to connect to people and say, okay, I got to first be understand what are the tools I have available for the house hunting process. How can I hit that in my value proposition, in my conversation? So I just will naturally kind of intertwine. This is what we use to help you find your home. This is what we use because we want you to find the home. And I basically just quote what NAR puts in of what they thought was the most important thing. I'm like, I'm sure you might think it's really important for me to help you find your next home. They're like, and I know that's true. They're like, yeah, absolutely. Because the survey said, I was like, and that is my focus. I'm going to help you do that. Like, so like immediately they're like, yeah, and then like right after that, you're like, and you may be wondering, about the process. I'm going to walk you through step by step about the process. And you're like, yeah, absolutely. Why am I doing that? It's not a gym thing. This is a survey thing of thousands of buyers that's what they want. And then the third thing is like, and you may not know other people that can help in the process. I will connect you with other people. So if you take those three things and say, that's going to be part of my competence. That's going to be how I share my competence. I'm going to share those things in that competent category. And then you can share your past sales and all of that stuff. But that would be a good add to your competence because I think that's where a lot of newer agents say, man, I care and I'll communicate. But I'm going to get beat out on this competence thing because I've only sold a handful of houses. You do not have to get beat out about that. I'll say that you do not have to get beat out. You can build that and build confidence that you have competence. And I want to encourage someone out there because I think there's agents that are like discouraged because they just feel like, yeah, I see, I've heard it. The cream is going to rise to the top, and I just started, and I'm not going to. Anybody can thrive in this new market, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. Competence breeds confidence. And sometimes having the competence component of it that you need to get to that confidence level, and to be able to have that energy and to share that with your clients where they too then have confidence and trust in your abilities and whatnot, is taking the time to do what you just shared, to break down your own value proposition into what you do really well. In that study, there was one done as well, but one of the big conglomerates that compiles all the data. And it spoke just to those two things. Buyers hire a buyer's agent to mitigate risk, right? And that has to do with the process and navigating it and all that kind of stuff that comes along with only doing something once every 7 or 8 years, which nobody is ever proficient at doing that in that timeline. So mitigating risk and making sure that they don't overpay. So those negotiation skills, right? And saying that you're going to be their advocate, you're going to be their guide, right? Because you've got, whether it's the experience or the process inside and out and you're hungry for it and whatnot, you're going to be their guide, but then you're going to be their advocate and really negotiate on their behalf. It's so tremendously valuable. Do not sell yourself short on what it is that you help people achieve and do.
There's nuggets in there. That was some gold nuggets, Abby, in that.
Wow.
That is so true. And I think that's man, it's you have to you can bring up negotiations faster with a buyer before the offer now because of the buyer representation. Like that's where like I use that form to bring up your negotiating skills and negotiating and how you're going to negotiate on their behalf. And to me, that is because a lot of the narrative is not going to be the negotiation. A lot of the narrative is I'm trying to convince them to pay me. I'm trying to convince the buyer to pay me. And that's an obstacle for a lot. I mean, so that's not how I go into it. And you got to shift that and say, I want them to know after this that I am someone that's advocating for them, that's negotiating for them, and that in their best interest for them not to have to pay. I want them to pay as little as possible for the house. And I want all their fees to be covered if at all possible. And this is how I'm going to try to do that. And I think the buyer agreement can be the reason why you're having those conversations. And I think you'll have a lot of confidence in that conversation.
Yeah. And I love the opportunity that's literally the vehicle. You're putting yourself in the situation that you need to have this successful conversation just by pulling out whatever your little buyer agency agreement, whatever it's called, in your state is. Like that provides you a tremendous opportunity to lead in and have these conversations for sure. I think it's amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. I've got 10 minutes with you left. I think I have like 17 other questions. I knew this was gonna fly by. For sure. Let's go quick over, just because I'm curious, what's this looking like on the seller side for you? How are these conversations going? Are they bringing it up? And then how are
Yes.
you, yeah, how are you, what's the most common question that you're getting from your seller clients?
Well, there's two things. I think that what we say to a client when someone says, well, what's your commission? What's your, they would ask that question. You have to make sure that you are separating those in those conversations, right? So like the conversation is, so all of a sudden, like you're saying a lesser commission, because in the past, like some agents would just say, well, this is my commission, and it's just chunking in the buyer agent compensation part of it. So some sellers are like, so what are you listing it for? Like, wow, like that's a lot. And then you're explaining, okay, this is why you would want to offer buyer broker compensation. And because we talk about from the seller side money. So like we do net sheets at the beginning. So like we'll show them net sheets. These are your expenses. So like we really hone into, it's not an expense to you. It will make you money. So right. So when it comes to a seller, it's the same conversation you would have, let's say, for a for sale by owner, right? So a for sale by owner would say, well, I save commission by not listing my home. And I would argue that you lose money, you save commission, but you lose money. So, because I can show that through a net sheet that you can list and pay full commission, full whatever that is on both sides, and it will net you more. Why? Because competition, because supply is down, and the competition drives the price and drives your net. So you're not saving money. You're saving maybe an expense, a line item that says commission, but you're losing the biggest line item you want to see is your net. So from a seller, I go right into the details of this will make you money. I mean, you want to offer this. Why wouldn't you offer this? Because this is going to pull in more potential buyers, and you don't have to accept anything. So it's negotiated. So if they're willing to pay up to whatever, or they're willing to pay up to, it's not fixed, it's negotiable. Everything is negotiable now. So because of that, to my sellers, I'm again pushing, I'm going to negotiate for you. I am a negotiator, and I'm going to negotiate in your best interest. You're my client. I'm representing you. But I think it's in your best interest to offer compensation to another party because you want as many buyers as possible to create possible multiple offer situation and other different variables in there. So I really think that is a huge thing. So sellers, I really go down, the net sheet, with them and really show them. And with the comparable properties, I also want them to know that the comparables that I'm pulling up, I want them to know that they were paying commission. So like if you pull a comp and you're like, hey, this is a comparable property, and they're like, well, I want my house to sell for X amount. And we know we've done this for sale by owners. If anyone's ever done for sale by owners, and they're like, well, my neighbor sold their house for X amount, I want to get the same thing. I was like, well, your neighbor listed the house, so you want to get that, or are you okay getting a little bit less because they didn't net that? They got, and then you start talking about the real nuts and bolts of what they're actually walking away with. So a seller, I think we are getting the question a lot more because sellers, they see it more as like, hey, I save money here. So like this is a savings potential for me. A buyer sometimes doesn't say anything, even if they know it, because they're like, I don't want to pay anything. Like I don't want to say anything. Maybe if I don't say anything at all about it. But the key is like, it doesn't matter if they say anything at all or not. We got to bring it up.
Yeah.
So that changes everything.
Yeah. At the end of the day, the seller is after the highest possible net, right? And taking out an incentive, which at the end of the day, that's how you really get the most competition, right? And get the highest and best offer. Taking that away is just, like you said, removing a line item and not netting them the most that they could possibly get. So I love that you continue to drive that home. Like, are you trying to achieve not paying up by a broker commission? Or are you trying to achieve the highest and best net?
Right. And
Number
I
one.
think it's just like you can flip this, and if you ask the right questions, it's not just about that. It's like why, like why are you doing it? Because ultimately, I mean, a seller, I mean, it's you're going down to they really want to net the most money, and they want to do that in the smoothest possible way.
Mhm.
So, I mean, so you kind of know where success is with the seller. So I think you got to just be able to show and articulate that, like, it may look like a line item, but it's going to actually make you money.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and if you haven't already, I would absolutely recommend pulling data from your MLS right now with what's being offered for buyer broker compensation before it is gone, because you can absolutely use that as a data point in conversations afterward. I'm going to guess nationally on average, this is about the statistic, but for your local market, it's probably about 95% of the homes listed in the MLS have an amount there. So
Mhm.
just saying.
Absolutely.
Okay. We've got questions flying in too. I actually really like this question. Also from a gym. They're wondering how would you treat a situation um if the buyer just completely refuses all out, like there's no way I'm going to agree to having compensation listed on your buyer agency agreement.
Um, like they're just going to do zero, and like they don't
Yeah,
want to
I'm flat
do.
out not paying you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't want to get into how every buyer agent agreement would be written, because
Sure.
I think that would really play into it. But from a practical level, like if they give me the ability to negotiate, and if I'm not able, and that's up to you, if I'm not able to negotiate, are you willing to do it for nothing? I mean, that's up to you. That's your own. I mean, you can go because I know I know that in the majority of cases currently, houses, that most people will be able to negotiate some commission.
Mhm.
Uh, so we know that going in, we know that like right now, if you look at the stats of like what's happening now, once we start getting into July, August, we're going to start seeing, okay, what are the ramifications of this? And we're going to get a little bit better data on like what that looks like. So I would say like what we look at is like you can have different agreements, maybe with a minimum, and then you can have it's like a varying price there, so you can have like, hey, this is my fee, but this is my minimum split. Like I know in our MLS, like they used to have like the minimum split, and then they would have, and you can do some variation of that because you can't get more. So if a seller's willing to give, let's say, a certain percentage, but your buyer broker agreement says something lower, you can only get what's on the buyer broker agreement. So what I want is permission for me to negotiate the fee. And then in that, I'm willing, if I'm unable to do that, then there's some sort of minimum in there, right? So like a minimum then that says, look, this is your worst case scenario, but you're agreeing to and that goes against everything. Like, so like, let's say there's a home and you negotiated and it wasn't your full fee. Well, their minimum then would go up, would eat into that. So like instead of them paying the full minimum, that's the most that they're going to pay is the minimum. And so and that's not, you don't have to do it that way. I'm just saying that could be a scenario that you end up doing. But yeah, I mean that's a difficult. And then if they don't, I mean there will be some that won't want representation. I mean, so again, like that's always going to be in our market. I mean, just like before this, there was agents that did not want to work with the buyer agent. I mean, they only wanted to call the listing agent, and that's all they wanted to do. Now, I think that from a listing agent standpoint, you're going to have some varying limited agency agreement that is probably going to be like you're writing offers or something like that. So you're going to see that too out there, I'm sure. So I see a lot of different changes that are going to come because of this. But I just think that you have to have some flexibility with the forms, but that's going to be all up to your brokerage or your state that you'd be in.
Yeah, follow your local regulations that you have, whether it's your company, whether
Absolutely.
it's your state, yeah, your local association, all that kind of stuff for sure. Jim, oh my gosh, amazing. Last final question for you, before we go ahead and close this out. given all things considered, right, we still don't know the full impact of what this is going to look like a year from now, unless you do, because then I would love that magic ball if you have it. But what would be your one big key takeaway you want people walking away from this webinar knowing?
Have confidence in your conversations. I think that I want to, what I hope is you have encouragement and encouragement for, because I just sense that there's this like a little bit of like cloud, and I want to break through that cloud and be just some light into your business and say, look, this is a great opportunity. You have to, there's things that you can do. There's things that we have no control over. And then there's things that we can actually proactively do. Do not waste your energy and your time and your mind and your thoughts on all these things you can't control. Focus on the things you can control. And if you go into these conversations and look at this as an opportunity, I have to hone, I want to care, I want to show my confidence, and I want to have really good communication, and I have to be me. And and people are going to want to work with me because I am the value that I'm bringing to the table, and everyone is different. And if you do that, you will be massively successful in this change. And I know it. It's just, you got to have confidence. You cannot have compensation conversations without confidence in your conversations. You will not be very successful. So you got to go into this with a positive mindset. You got to be prepared, and then you just got to let's let it go and just do it, because I think that we all can do this. I think we really need one another. I think we really need support, and we need more of this. And do not be somebody else, just be you. That's a big thing. So I just said a whole lot of stuff right there. And you said, what's one thing? See, that's what problem, Abby. I just keep going, and but you got this. We got this. That's the one thing. You got it. Be positive. I hope everybody can leave this call with a little bit of information, but also with a little bit more like positive view of what's happening.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for taking the time to pour into so many of us that have listened to this. You have so much passion for sure that we can all see, and positivity without a doubt. But my goodness, this was amazing and incredible. And I think something that we all needed to hear, because we absolutely can get through this, and we'll get through it faster, stronger as a team, and helping one another out with it for sure. So Jim, always a pleasure. Oh, I'm always so energized after I talk to you. And I, again, have a full page of notes to walk away from this with. So thank you so much for the time. I know you're busy. Really appreciate it. Please send our love to Kim too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right.
It's my honor to be here.
You know that I feel good. Doing things I never thought I could. Smiling in the mirror, I look good. Like I should. I feel brand spanking new. I don't know about you, I feel good. And I'm clocking out, been working hard, I'ma hit the town. I'm at the beach when I'm in the house. I set the seas when I'm on the couch. Got sunshine in a bottle every time I take a swallow, like I'm taking a vacation.